It's time now to review headlines in today's newspapers. Steve, what have we got?
Yes, we start with This Day, Abby. This Day on Saturday. And of course, the lead story in This Day is what you will find in practically all the papers today. It's the big news of yesterday, which Nigerians will deal with till the end of the year. It is the president's, laying of the budget proposal at the National Assembly. And the lead story here says, President, oil subsidy ends next year. It is unsustainable. And the rider, boosts that, unveils a 20.51 trillion naira budget, 5.35 trillion capital expenditure, 6.31 trillion for debt servicing, 8.8 trillion new borrowings, with 10.78 trillion deficit. That is the budget that will take, Buhari out of the scene next year and then bring in the new president. That's what you will have on the cover of most of the papers today. And it's something it has to be that big because everything about the economy rests on the budget. And given the fact that this is the last budget of the president, and then the budget that whoever comes in, whoever succeeds in, will have to deal with. Yeah. It is an important thing. It is interesting that the amount of money that Buhari will be spending, the deficit component of this budget, the 20.51 trillion naira budget, is 2 times the amount or the size of the budget that he met, the entire budget of Jonathan that he met in 2015, which as at that time was just 4.5 trillion. So you can see how far we have moved in 7.5 to 8 years. As at that time, 4.5 trillion total budget. Today, for next year, 20.51 trillion naira budget, 10.78 trillion naira deficit, 8 trillion additional borrowings, and 6 out of the 20 that is proposing, 6.31 trillion will be for debt services. The amount that is using to service debt alone is bigger than the size of the budget that he met in 2015, which Jonathan left for him. This says a lot about how far we have come. Yes, what workers are earning now is not what they were earning when he came in. What we are dealing with in terms of inflation, in terms of revenue profiling, of course, has grown, significantly. But then what Nigerians will ask, and average Nigerians will be, what is in this budget for me? As an individual, as a worker, as a trader, as a retiree, for example, all the spectrum of Nigerian life. The figure is big, the biggest ever that we have had, 20 trillion. But then what is in there for people? Capital expenditure alone is 5.35 trillion naira, which, by the way, is lower than what he proposed last year. What to spend, in this current budget is lower by a few, billions. But then at 5.35 trillion naira capital expenditure, it simply means that if you put the entire debt, is bigger than what you were proposing to spend, on capital expenditure. So what is in this for us?
It's a big question. It's a big question.
It's tough.
I mean, another highlight of this was, of course, addressing the ASU, 470 billion naira allocated to revitalization and salary enhancements. Is this a round of applause to him, in your opinion?
It's a better deal, given the fact that ASU was asking for 1.2 trillion.
Yes.
And this government is saying we've been doing something. We have been graduating our intervention, and that next year will be better because we are proposing 470-something billion, which is not a bad thing because you really can't. I do not know of any government that will give 1.2 trillion like that, as desirable as it is, that will give 1.2 trillion. They simply can't afford it. Look at the amount of money that they will have to borrow, and you are borrowing basically to do so many things, including not just servicing capital expenditure, but also to service your debts.
That's not a realistic spend. Well, that figure.
The intervention for education.
Yes, please.
It is realistic. It is commendable. It's just a proposal. It's just a proposal. Yeah. But it is realistic. How much of it the education sector will be able to draw is another thing, because everything is a projection. Government is projecting that a total of 16 trillion will be its revenue, including the borrowings. But then you may not get everything, and a whole lot would depend on that before you now start disbursing. You have had the Works Commissioner, for example, saying, at a time that we can't even access up to 60% of what was, approved for us. So approval is one thing, but then cash backing is another thing. Big money, big aspiration, a budget of consolidation, and then, something for the incoming government to stabilize. But then how much of that, how realistic is it? How much of that, will be beneficial to the people? We don't know. Given the fact that this year alone, up to 4 trillion will be spent on subsidy, more than 6 trillion on subsidy alone in this budget.
That is a staggering amount.
That's a staggering amount. I'm not sure if people will applaud it, but then let's see how it goes. Yeah. By the time it is passed by the National Assembly. But this is the recurrent news in practically all the newspapers.
And you're right, this is going to be a conversation till
January next year. Definitely till January next year. Other stories on the cover of this day, on Saturday, return to classrooms immediately. Appeal court orders ASU. And we know that this is not looking too good for ASU. On the one hand, ASU will now have to contend with two other unions, which the federal government has approved: the Congress of Nigeria University Academics, CONUA, and the National Association of Medical and Dental Academics, which basically is a way of the federal government to say that we won't be proceeding into the new year, with just the ASU. I'm not so sure how much of this actually, stands firm, as far as the laws are concerned. But then this is the government saying this is how we want to deal with it.
One could say it's not been a good year for ASU, for
not
the
at
students,
all.
But many would also say it's not been a good year for them for many years.
For ASU, I think
based on their requests.
You're right, Abby. I think for ASU, part of the problem would be that it doesn't look like they know when they have an exit strategy. For how long are you going to be on strike? No government will sit down and fold their hands and just watch you say that until you give us 1.2 trillion or sign off on all the agreement. Yeah. We won't return to classes. Government will have to do something. Quickly on other stories, Vincent Ogbulafo passes on at 73. That's a page on 74. This is a former chairman of the PDP when they were the ruling party. He was, I think, under the Yaradua administration. He was famous for saying something like he didn't mind PDP being, Nigeria being a one-party state. And he was quoted famously for saying that PDP will rule Nigeria for 60 years. Of course, that didn't happen because that dream exactly was truncated in 2015. Dangote Cement, that's on the window. Dangote Cement to Governor Bello. We own Obajana Cement 100%. There are issues between the governor of Kogi State and the Dangote Cement. And last but not the least, on page 8 is something to cheer about. Chimamanda Adichie receives Harvard's highest honor. I mean, that's one of the...
So refreshing to hear.
Absolutely. You know that Chimamanda... How many of her books have you read? I mean...
Well, I wish I have a library of it. If I could, I would. I've only read 2 that I really appreciate.
Yeah. Great author, brilliant speaker too.
So lucid,
and getting this highest award in Harvard, says a lot about the fact that, literary giants and somebody who's phenomenal, who's vehement, who is very proud of our Nigerian origins and our Igbo origins, we must commend her, and applaud the fact that she got Harvard's highest honor. It doesn't look like we've got any time for any other paper. Like we said, it's all about, the budget essentially, and let's just hope that the budget will be implemented by the time it's passed, and the new government coming May 29 next year will take off from
absolutely lots to hope for over the next few months.
Is living it.
Right.